Hello friends, and hello, all kind and adequate people. Today I want to tell you a very simple method of increasing the concentration of NAD in our body. Those who are interested in the topic of anti-aging know that NAD. This is a molecule that is of great importance in the aging of the body, because when we get older, the concentration of these molecules in our body drops, and as a result, all vital processes slow down, starting from energy generation in cells, both at the stage of glycolysis and at the stage of energy formation in mitochondria, and also the genes of youth, sirtuins, cannot work properly. Sirtuins are genes that code for the same proteins, and these proteins protect our DNA from damage. You know that DNA damage is one of the causes of aging because errors accumulate in the cells, and so aging, if you look at it philosophically, is the main cause of all the diseases that are taken away from a person as health, from cardiovascular to cancer to metabolic diseases to neurodegenerative diseases. And that is why fighting aging equals fighting all age-related changes. I will say right away that of course we are not going to talk about any large-scale research on humans, because it is impossible to do this with regard to anti-aging, but the molecular mechanisms, cellular mechanisms, everything has been tested on animals, and we are beginning to understand how it all works. So, as we get older, the number of overplus decreases. This, as I say, is a medical fact, and it decreases not only because our organism starts to produce less of it, but also because we accumulate aging cells, and aging cells secrete special substances that can trigger inflammation in us. And under the influence of this inflammation, the enzymes ST-38, which are on the blood cells, on the cells of the immune system, on the walls of blood vessels, are activated, and these enzymes ST-38 start to process the plus. That is, they break it down simply by breaking it down. On the one hand, ST-38 are good enzymes, because inflammation is the body's defense response to some kind of damage. But on the other hand, when inflammation has gone on too long, and there is too much of it, it destroys the body. And that is the pattern we see with aging. Unfortunately, ST-38 enzymes are overactivated. For example, in people with cancer, their activity is 3 times higher than in healthy people. This leads to the fact that the reserves fall above the plus. And if the reserves fall above the plus, we still have unprotected genes. We begin to suffer from mitochondria, where energy is generated. These are just, I guess, 2 examples out of many. And to date, the accepted strategies in anti-aging are taking supplements that raise us above plus, that is not generated by our body, but we introduce from outside. For example, these are precursors like nicotinamide riboside and nicotinamide mononucleotide. And now they have also come up with the idea of taking the plus side and giving such infusions to people in the form of intravenous infusions. I talked about it. I gave an assessment of whether or not to do it. There is a video, I will give a link, look who is interested. But instead of doing expensive supplements, we can go the other way. Let's reduce the destruction over the plus side. Because if we inhibit the active ST-38, we will automatically have an increase in above plus. That has already been proven on cell cultures. Molecular mechanisms have been given, and of course it has been worked out on animals, and even now drugs are being developed to treat cancer and inflammation, exactly which blocks ST-38. But we don't need that, we can take regular parsley. The thing about parsley is that it contains a substance called apigenin. Apigenin blocks the activity of the enzyme ST-38, as a result of which, as it is not hard to guess, we have an increase in concentration over plus. And generally speaking, that is a pretty good solution. Yes, there are, of course, apigenin supplements. Since it is in parsley, why not isolate it? And it is dosed at 50, there is 100 milligrams, but for me personally, I think that whenever we can substitute a supplement with some natural product, especially if it is inexpensive and it is not strained, we should always do it. Why? Because additives are a good thing, I guess, for manufacturers, but you and I can do a chemical analysis. We can see what is inside, what amount of substance is declared, how it is assimilated. Because every manufacturer writes, of course, that his substance is assimilated the best. Or by SAMA, let's say apigenin is better than regular apigenin. Sort of, yes, in theory, but what is inside is unknown. Parsley, here it is, you can feel it and evaluate it. So let's get to the bottom of it. If there is apigenin in parsley, how much of it do we need to consume in order to get some effect? Here we should still start from the studies that have been carried out, although not many, and realize that we need about 50 to 100 milligrams of apigenin a day to support these conditions that we are talking about. And I've done videos before where I recommended 30 grams of parsley, given that a fresh bunch in 100 grams of greens contains 215 milligrams of apigenin. We need 50, so it makes sense that if we eat 30 grams, we're more than covering our needs. But that is not the case, and here I have to say that in that video I made a mistake in the calculations and did not take into account the bioavailability. And the bioavailability of apigenin is very bad, disgusting. First of all, it is in parsley not just as pure apigenin, but in the form of a certain inactive compound that needs to be activated. And so the activation of the apigenin happens in our intestines. Out of 100% of the apigenin that we ate, about 30 to 60% of it is only converted into the active form. And these percentages depend on the state of your gastrointestinal tract and also on the bacterial microflora, which is hard to estimate somehow. So let's take from 30 to 60, well, let it be an average of 45% of all that apigenin, which is in parsley. We have converted into working apigenin, but there is more to it than that. This working apigenin, it matches the apigenin that we take in supplements, for example, but only 20% of this working apigenin is absorbed in the gastrointestinal tract. So there is even less left over. And it turns out that if we consider a fresh bunch of parsley, the concentration of apigenin that we get into the bloodstream is 10 times less than the concentration that is in a bunch of parsley. And I did the calculations, not complicated in principle, but quite voluminous. Just trust me, 3 grams of dried parsley contains just the right amount of apigenin, approximately 10 to 12 milligrams of apigenin. In 1 tablespoon is exactly how much is contained in 3 grams of dried parsley. But if you are a fan of fresh parsley, that is about 55 grams of fresh parsley a day. And then you also have to be aware of the fact that apigenin is better absorbed when taken together with something fatty, because it is a fat-soluble molecule. So classically, when we eat a salad, we add lard oil to it. That is okay. If you are using dried parsley, again, you have to add something to add some fat in order to better absorb that apigenin. And on top of that, our good old pepperin, the one found in black pepper, also helps improve the transport of the apigenin through the intestinal wall. So the gold standard, if you are using parsley, you need, let's say, olive oil, you need black pepper, and then the chances of absorption are greatly improved. And of course, questions will arise, and with the constant use of dried parsley, 1 tablespoon a day, won't there be any side effects? Well, in terms of apigenin content, it would be similar to a supplement that contains 50 milligrams of apigenin. In terms of other substances, yes, there is a little bit of oxalate in there, about the same as 20 to 25 grams of spinach. There is also vitamin K in there, but there is no excess of vitamin K. Again, I have a video on that. Well, another tablespoon of dried parsley would contain approximately 15 milligrams of opiol. But opiol is a substance that, however, if you take it in 30 times more quantity, it can cause contraction of uterus in a woman. And earlier folk medicine used to extract it from parsley seeds, used it to induce labor, to initiate abortions, but it is very dangerous because there is a big toxic effect. And in such quantity in which we use, especially since it is leaves, not parsley seeds, there will be no significant opiol, and that is why all these possible side effects. If you take care of yourself, you cannot use it for people who are pregnant. That is, pregnant women. Although it seems strange to me, they can eat salads. Parsley is also there. In addition, if there are any issues with coagulated osteal blood, you are taking warfarin, let us say, then probably a large amount of dried parsley you do not need. And if you have a tendency to formation of oxalate stones, you should also be cautious about it, although you can balance the use of parsley, for example, with lemon juice or magnesium citrate. And this will lead to the fact that there will be a competition between citrate and oxalate in urine for calcium. And calcium citrate, it is soluble. It won't form stones. And calcium oxalate is not soluble. It will form stones. So when you add citrate to your urine, well, by consuming it first with food, you thereby reduce the chances of stone formation, even if you have a large amount of oxalate in your urine. And it should be said at once that this is only in certain people. That is, oxalates are not absorbed in large quantities by everyone. Not everyone excretes them in large quantities in the urine. Well, there are no other side effects. Well, and on the cost, I looked at a kilogram of dried parsley Cost us on the internet 150 grill. So that is enough if you take 3 grams a day for 300, practically a year. The budget, I think, is quite modest, unlike apigenin in capsules, and especially unlike NMR, and of course from expensive NAD plus drips. So you can consume parsley and increase your NAD plus levels. Again, this is not a guarantee that you will live 20 to 30, negative 40 years longer, but there is already an interesting, serious scientific background underneath this. And the most important thing is that this tactic is safe. Personally, I am using it, and I am giving you the information. Well, that is it. If you are interested in an in-depth approach to your health, in the first comment on this video and in the description after the video there are links to courses that are dedicated to normalizing weight, blood pressure, fighting atherosclerosis, and even increasing healthy life expectancy.